Luke 6:20 through 31. Then he looked at his disciples and said, "Blessed are you who are poor, for yours is the kingdom of God. Blessed are you who are hungry now, for you will be filled. Blessed are you who weep now, for you will laugh. Blessed are you when people hate you, and when they exclude you, revile you, and defame you on account of the Son of Man. Rejoice that day and leap for joy, for surely your reward is great in heaven, for that is what their ancestors did to the prophets. But woe to you who are rich, for you've received your consolation. Woe to you who are full now, for you will be hungry. Woe to you who are laughing now, for you will mourn and weep. Woe to you when all speak well of you, for that is what their ancestors did to the false prophets. But I say to you that listen, love your enemies. Do good to those who hate you. Bless those that curse you. Pray for those who abuse you. If anyone strikes you on the cheek, offer the other also. And from anyone who takes away your coat, do not withhold even your shirt. Give to everyone who begs from you. And if anyone takes away your goods, do not ask for them again. Do to others as you would have them do to you. The word of God for the people of God.
Thanks be to God.
So yesterday I got to visit another church, and it was kind of cool because I was part of this conference team that went over to help them just look at different things. And this is a really strong church, but just to kind of look at some things from several different aspects and talk to them and kind of hear their story and how do they want to go deeper in their faithfulness as a church and in their community and as followers of Christ. How do they want to do that? And just hearing that story and hearing from them about how they want to grow in their faith, how they want to go deeper, and how they want to be able to share the love of God with as many people as they possibly can. It was just so interesting and so fun to be able to be a part of another church, another thriving church. I see so many different parallels to our church, because it's a church that's very active in the community. They do so many good things in the community. But they're also kind of seeking to develop a stronger foundation in God's love and feel a deeper desire to have that connection with Jesus Christ and those that are around them, and how they might actually share God's love with others and give them hope, just as God has given them hope in their lives, and as a faith community. And so it spoke to me really very much like this passage that we're talking about today. We often look at the Beatitudes, as they're called, the blessings, as a blessing or a woe. It's something that Jesus talked about on the Mount. But this time as I read it, or just kind of read the text in a new way, it was really kind of interesting because when Terry was reading the Beatitudes, she read the blessings and the woes, and I always think of the woes as WHOA, right? Where Jesus is going, whoa now, don't you be doing this over here, because we want you to experience the blessings, right? But it's actually so much more, and it's kind of interesting because, you see, this is just a part of this story that Luke's presenting us about Jesus coming to this area and ending up giving this Sermon on the Mount. And so let me read you the preface to this part right here. So Jesus came down with them and stood on a level place with a great crowd of his disciples and a great multitude of people from Judea all around, from Jerusalem way down the road, all the people from Asheville drove over to hear this, right? To be a part of this, to see what Jesus was doing. And the coast of Tyre and Sidon, they were coming in from the beach. That's like, the fall here for the last couple of weeks, right? And that's probably what it felt like. People had gathered around, and it's just like the streets in Bryson City when the colors are changing. They're packed. Everything's packed here. There's so many people around just trying to see what's going on. And that's what they were doing when they were seeing Jesus. It was almost like going to a football game or something, right? They were just clamoring and trying to get in and be healed. And it goes on and talks about they'd come to hear him and to be healed of their diseases. And those who were troubled with unclean spirits were cured. And all in the crowd were trying to touch him, for power came out from him and healed all of them. It must have been this incredible atmosphere, almost this charged atmosphere, like when you would go to a big concert or a football game, with so many people around. So many people want to see what's going on and kind of checking it out. But it was almost as if this crowd was at a distance a little bit. And so then Jesus looks up at his disciples, and we pick up our story today. You see that it was probably over the heads for a lot of the people that were just out there who had just come to see what Jesus was all about. They'd come from far around. They'd heard about this guy, Jesus, who was a prophet, who was healing, who was doing amazing things. And they wanted to see what was going on and to see how life was around Jesus. Some had been suffering and wanted to be healed. Some just wanted to just see if he really was a man of God like they had heard. And so thousands and thousands and thousands of people must have come that day and were gathered around kind of in a mixture of near and far and just kind of seeing what's going on and, eating their sandwiches up on the hill and, they're whatever they were doing and kind of hanging out with their family and going, oh, he just healed another one. And there we go. Okay, Johnny, it's your turn. And kind of doing their own thing. But then Jesus looks up and he tells his disciples who were really there. They were following him. They were engaged with Jesus, right? They wanted to hear because Jesus was a rabbi. He was a teacher, and they were his disciples or students that were following and trying to listen. They tended to follow him around. We think of the disciples as being the 12, right? But it was more than that. It was a whole big gang. The 12 was more of his inner circle who tended to be with him and travel with him, and they would spend a lot of quality time together. But he taught a lot of people that traveled around with him. Probably dozens of people that came and followed him, and every chance they got, they wanted to go hear him and just be around him and learn from him. And so Jesus looked up his disciples and said, now, when Jesus looked at them, he was talking to, the community of his followers and to us as the church, right? It's not like he was looking outside. He was looking at us who were already starting to try to listen and follow and keep up with Jesus. And he spoke words of encouragement. You know what? When you're going through tough times, you're going to be blessed. But if you get a little bit too much wrapped up in yourself, if you get distracted by other things in life, it's liable to get tough. One of the things that I've heard is that when are you closest to God? We were talking about this in Sunday school class this morning, and we all kind of shared that it seems like we're closest to God when we're struggling, when we're going through something, when we desperately need God's presence around us in our lives healing. And Jesus is telling just these people, the outcasts, those that are suffering, physically, those that may be just struggling to get by, he says, you know what? You're really the ones that are blessed because you're leaning on God. You are putting God in your heart and holding God strong in your heart because you need God. And you recognize that you need God. But sometimes when we focus on wealth or consumption, we focus on living the good life. We focus on having a good time and not caring for others. Sometimes that comes around to bite us. And so Jesus wants us to know that God is with us. God is with us in our struggles. God is with us in the hard times, but also in the good times. But Jesus reminds us, hold on to God in those good times. It's common for when something bad happens in our country or in our communities that more people come in to churches, more people turn to God in prayer because they know that's when we recognize that we need God's presence. And Jesus is telling his disciples, hold on to that. Hold on to God. And when other people are giving you a hard time about it, it's okay. Because you will experience God's love in new and fresh ways. Jesus came to bring restoration. Jesus came to bring hope. And he's telling his disciples right here that you children of God, have hope. What a beautiful thing. Now, when I first read the second part, I recognized that he'd been just talking to his disciples, and they were surrounded by this big crowd all around them. And then he says, but then I say to you that listen. And at first I thought, he's looked back up to the crowd. Okay, now maybe he's been teaching his disciples, and some others have started listening in, right? Hey, this is good stuff. Jesus has got it going on. But then I realized that he's starting to go a little bit deeper. Even some of his disciples aren't quite ready for the next part, are they? And so he's looking at his disciples who are listening, who are intent, who are hanging on his every word, who's maybe made that next step. And he's saying, okay, you know this part. Now it's time to go a little bit deeper. Don't just love those that love you. Love your enemies. What? Yeah, you're going to have to go pretty deep spiritually. You're going to have to be tight with God to be able to do that, aren't you? Bless those who curse you. Pray for those who abuse you. He flips cultural expectations on their head and says, I need you to lead a different life. This one isn't going to be easy, but you'll be blessed. You'll have God on your side. Because if you've kind of read through this book right here, you may have picked up that God and Jesus seems to have a preference for those that are struggling. God seems to have a preference for those that are oppressed, for those that desperately need God. And maybe it's for the same reason that Jesus is telling his disciples that you're blessed when you're struggling. You're blessed when you're hungry. You're blessed when you're oppressed, because that's when you hang on to God the tightest. And then Jesus tells us that once you're blessed, go on to be a blessing to the world. Love, offer grace, give hope in whatever way you can. Don't hold back. Because when you hold back, you're holding back from God. What if we gave it all to God? Because I believe when we do, then we experience God's love